So I wanted to make a short video for you to explain to everybody what it is that I do and how I do it, because it's one of the common questions that's asked of me all the time. How do you connect? So anybody who's been to me for a reading already, you'll know this because I talk about this at the beginning of every session to explain to people how it works, okay? So I just want to start by explaining that I don't do anything that any of you that are watching can't do, okay? Everybody has the ability to connect with spirit. Yes, you might say that, okay, several generations of my family have been able to do this. And back, you know, in the kind of 1900s, kind of 1910, 1920, 1930s, my great-grandmother used to give readings publicly, you know, from her home, not like on stage or anything, but she used to open her house every Friday for people to come for readings. So yes, it has been back several generations in my family, but it doesn't mean that everybody can't do it. It's just a matter of learning to read the signs. But for the purpose of this video today, all I want to talk about is how I do it and what the different terms mean, which is why I've put up the sign here behind me. It's an old one, but I haven't had it updated just yet. But I want to go through some of these, and when I'm looking at my camera, I can see backwards. I hope it doesn't come out that way when the video is made, but I will tell you what it says anyway, okay? So the first thing that I want to start with explaining is the first one, which says psychic medium, okay? So I am a psychic medium. I call myself just a medium because mediumship is what I prefer to do and what I feel most comfortable doing. But I do psychic work as well. So what's the difference between a psychic and a medium? Because a lot of people wouldn't know, okay? And I don't expect you to know. But if you think of everything in simple terms, a psychic is someone who reads the energy of the living and a medium is someone who reads the energy of the dead. So a psychic is somebody that would read you what's going on in your life, what's coming up in the future. So in the old days, people would have called it fortune telling, okay? Now, you will notice that it's not a term that many people use anymore. The reason for that is quite simple. Nowadays, we understand that your future is not set in stone. When you come to have your cards read, now, it doesn't matter if you go to see a psychic. I use tarot cards, as it says here on the bottom of the sign. If you go to see a psychic that uses tarot cards, whether they use a crystal ball, they may use tea leaves, they may use palm reading. Doesn't matter what way they're reading you. They're reading your energy. It's just a tool. Now, I was on Canadian television last year and I was kind of slated by several psychics for saying this, but I can only speak for myself about how it works for me. Okay, so I use tarot cards, but I call them my tool, okay? So sometimes people come to me for readings and they're very nervous or they don't want to give anything away, you know, to tell the psychic the information. And I don't need or want you to. Okay, but people come in and they're so closed. And when you come into my office, if anybody's been to my home, I have lots of crystals and ornaments and stuff in my office. And 9 out of 10 times people will come and say, that's lovely, what's this, what's that? And that relaxes them and it makes them open their energy. So if most of the stuff that I tell people about themselves when I'm reading the cards, I could tell it without the cards. But their energy is so closed that if I give them a distraction, they open up, okay? So they're so busy looking at the pictures on the tarot cards, they drop their guard and they leave their energy open to be read. So it makes it easier for me. I don't know, I can't speak exactly for how other psychics work. Everybody will probably work differently. But whatever they're using, whatever modality, whether, as I say, it's the crystal ball, I have one here in my office, which is gathering dust, but the tarot cards is my favourite way to read. Okay, so when we're looking towards your future, it's not set in stone. We'll read the path you're on, we'll read the direction that you're headed in. But if I say something to you when you're here for a reading that you don't like, I mean, it's a heads up to say that this is what's coming. You can still change it. It doesn't have to happen. And that's why most people would use the term psychic now. So when you go to see a psychic, it's all about you. It's all about what's coming up in your future. Okay, the mediumship is different. The mediumship is about connecting with spirit. Okay, so as I say, not every psychic will do medium work. Not every medium will do psychic work. So always ask when you're making an appointment, make sure that the reader you're booking with can give the kind of reading that you're looking for, okay? So with the mediumship, which is a little bit more complicated to explain, okay? Now every medium can do the same thing. There's no medium that I could say to you is any better than anybody else. each medium will connect with spirit, okay? A medium is the medium or the middle person between the spirit world and the earth world. The only difference between us is how we make the connection with spirit. How are we talking to them? Now, the first thing I say is I say to people, think of your medium as a translator. So if I was speaking Yiddish, if I was speaking Polish, Slovakian, it doesn't matter, whatever language that I'm speaking, if you don't speak that language, then you're going to need a translator. So think of the spirit as speaking in a different language, okay? The language that I use mostly is telepathy, so it's like a transfer of thought, okay? But there's several different ways, and hence the clairsentient word that I've written up there, okay? So there's actually two ways. There's several ways of connecting with spirit, okay? And I have them all on my website, and I've posted the link several times. So you've got clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairaudience, clairguscience. There's many different ways. And in times I will use all of them in different things. Okay, so what do they mean? Okay, so clairsentience, clair means clear, okay? So clairsentience is clear feeling. Clairvoyance is clear seeing. Clairaudience is clear hearing. Clairguscience is clear smelling. So they're just all different ways of getting information from people and, you know, finding out who is talking to you and who, what information they want to get through. So the word medium tells you that this person is a translator from the spirit world, okay, so they can connect with spirit. The other words, the clairsentient medium, the clairaudient medium, that's the adjective which tells you how exactly that they are going to connect. Okay, so for me, there's several different ways. And if you think about people that have spoken about their perception of spirit in the past, the most common way that you will hear people say is that they've smelled something, clairguscience. Okay, people always talk about connecting in their dreams, but I think you will find that far more people will connect through something that they've smelled. People will say, oh, I smelled flowers, you know, I smelled daffodils, or I smelled roses, you know, my granny always had them in her garden, or I could smell her perfume, or I could smell daddy's pipe. All these kind of things, okay? Personally, for me, for example, my granddad was an army man, okay? He was very minimalist in all his like products, you know, but I suppose back then they didn't have many beauty products, or especially for the males. But carbolic soap, okay, if anybody remembers carbolic soap in the old days, they would have had it in their kit bag from the army, always washed with carbolic soap. So there would be this very medicinal, if you like, smell about him. And I smell that when my granddad is around, okay? So there's a smell, I think, that you will associate with all of your loved ones, okay? And a lot of people will get that smell, and it's their sense that their loved one is around them. Okay, so when I'm reading, people will notice that I say, oh, I heard this clearly, or I smell this very clearly, different things that go on. But the main two ways that I would connect with spirit would be clairvoyance and clairsentience. Okay, so clairvoyance again is clear seeing, clairsentience is clear feeling. So I see and I feel the energy of spirit. Okay, so how does that work? So when I say I see spirit, okay, it's nothing like they show on television. So many people have seen a program that's on called Medium, okay? I think that's the name of it. It's I read the book years ago. It's about Alison Dubois. It's based on her true life story and her experiences, okay? But they show spirit around. So there'll be a man walking behind her and he'll be tapping on her shoulder and he'll be whispering into her ear. It doesn't always work like that. I would have been locked up years ago if I were to see people constantly walking around me, walking through walls, floating through ceilings, all this kind of stuff, okay? I mean, as it was when I was a teenager, I thought I was schizophrenic. So if that was to go on every day, I mean, you know, us mediums, we wouldn't have a life at all. So think about it logically, okay? When I was a little girl, okay, it worked different for me when I was a little girl because kids are much more perceptive. Any of you that are watching that have children or have experience with children, how many times a day do they ask you to prove something? Put the hands on the hips and they'll go, show me, show me. Okay, this is what kids do. So kids have to see something before they will believe it. So when I was a child, okay, always, my mother said from the time I was born, I'd always be looking around at things. I always was gobbledygook talking to people. When I started to talk, when I was a little toddler in my cot, I used to talk about a woman and a little boy that used to sleep with me each night. And all through the years, I used to talk about different people that used to come and go, and I could see those people. I still have memories of some of those people that I saw quite clearly in the room with me, like they were people. Okay, and I didn't know who wasn't of this world and who was of this world, because to me these were all just souls, people, spirits around me, and I didn't differentiate. As I got older, it changed a little bit. Now, it changed a little bit partly when I was so young, because I had a passing in my life. So when I was 7 years old, my grandmother died suddenly. She was 56, and that was my first great loss. Now, I was there in the hospital with her the day she passed. So my mother, we're talking back like 1982 here, there was no mobile phones. So my mother went to the office to phone her family and tell them, you know, they must come to the hospital, that something had happened with their mother, okay? So while she was gone, the nurse pulled the curtain around the bed. I was sitting beside my grandmother, and I didn't know what passed away meant when I was 7. So I thought my nanny, as I called her, was just asleep. But while I was holding her hand and she was asleep in the bed, she was also doing my hair. She used to love my hair, and my hair used to be really long, and she used to plait it, and she used to fiddle with it and stuff. So to me, she was just still there. She was hanging around, she was still by her body, and even at the funeral, I could see her, whereas everybody was crying, and I was saying, well, why are people crying? And, you know, people were explaining that Nanny was gone to heaven, she was gone to live with Holy God, and she wasn't going to be coming to see us anymore. And I was like, well, actually, no, she's over there sitting beside Granddad, you know. And the reaction of people scared me, because they couldn't see her, and I thought that they could, okay? So this is when it changed for me, because I closed down. So since that date, it's only been sporadically, I guess, that I see spirit. Now, I still do, and many of you will have seen, even a couple of months ago, I put up a video of a spirit that walked into one of my readings, okay? So I still do from time to time, but if you can imagine how much energy it takes for a spirit to come here and manifest a vision of a body that they no longer have, okay? It takes a lot of energy for them to give this message from the spirit world, but then they're coming and they're having to manifest, okay, so for them to be standing beside me here in the room, they're having to manifest a vision of a body that we've either buried or we've cremated. They don't have this body anymore. They don't look the same, okay? So they would only be able to stay a minute or two if they were to appear like that, okay? Because it just zaps their energy. And when you're in a reading, you want them to stay longer. We all want them to stay longer. We want them to talk about their experience. You know, is it really them? Tell me things about you, how you died, what you look like. You know, is there a memory, you know, that only the two of us can have shared, that you can tell this medium just to prove to me that it is you. And then when we've, you know, proved, when we've got enough evidence to say that it is your loved one, then we want to know, you know, do they still live somewhere? Do they see what's going on around us? So they're all the time trying to give us this information. Okay, so how it works, as I said at the beginning, it's like telepathy. It's a transfer of thought. So while I will sometimes see the person in the room with me, or I will see a scene unfold in front of me, a lot of time, especially in one-to-one readings, it can happen more powerfully in audience demonstrations, because there's more competition, I guess, because you've got an audience of 100, 200 people, whatever, and there's so many spirits in the room in order to compete, and they only have a couple of minutes while I'm on stage. So then I will see a lot more, okay? However, when you're here in the room with me, you're going to be here for 45, 50 minutes or more, okay? And we're going to be talking a lot to all of your loved ones, as many as we can get through on the day. Okay, so they have to show me what they want to talk about. Now, don't forget, they haven't got a physical body, so therefore they don't have a physical voice. Now, sometimes I will hear things, and you will talk about clear audience, people who can hear things. Okay, but sometimes it's just a noise. Sometimes it is a sliver of a voice, but it will mostly be a voice from a memory, okay? So they don't have this voice box. They can't talk to us as they would have done when they were alive. So it is telepathy. It's a transfer of thoughts. So they're putting thoughts and pictures into my head, okay? So they might show me a video clip of something that happened when they were alive, a memory they have of you, something that was said, or a joke, a private joke perhaps that they had. I do remember connecting with one of my own relatives, and they gave me a nickname that they had. As at the time I thought it was from my grandmother, because they said Nanny. But when I went back to my mother and checked this information out, it was actually a nickname that her and her brother, who was the relative that I'd connected with, had for their grandmother, who they also called Nanny, and they had this nickname that they used to call her behind her back. It was just between the two of them. So little tidbits of information like this, okay? Things that only you and them would know, and I as a stranger wouldn't know, okay? So they're putting all these thoughts, little video clips, pictures, like actual photographs sometimes. They might show me a photograph that you still have. In a reading recently, somebody showed me a photograph which was shoved into a cupboard, you know, the grooves in a cupboard in the kitchen. And somebody would spend all day, every day, while they were cooking, while they were cleaning, while they were doing bits and pieces in the kitchen, talking to this photograph. And they showed me this photograph. They were able to describe what they were wearing in this photograph and the occasion that it was taken at. Okay, so those little things, it's like, I see you, I hear you talking to my photograph, I see my photograph in the kitchen. Okay, so these little things, things that I can't possibly know, and they're telling me, and this is the information that you need to know that yes, it's them. Yes, they're still, you know, their spirit still lives somewhere, and yes, that they still see what's going on in life for you. Okay, so while I'm seeing this in my head, I also need some communication. So that's where the clairsentience comes in. So that's clear feeling. Okay, so while they're showing me all these pictures, their energy is coming as close as possible to me. Okay, so I start to feel a bit like I'm them. So I start to get all this information. Okay, so do I feel male or do I feel female? Do I feel young or do I feel old? Do I feel like I'm ill or do I feel like I passed very quickly? So it's all about how I feel. Okay, and people that come to me, I'm always going, I feel this and I feel that. And it is about feeling. Okay, so what I see and what I feel. So the clairsentience is clear feeling or clear senses. So I'm using my senses, all of my senses, my smell, my hearing, my touch, you know, and just my general feeling and well-being. So as well as, you know, male, female, young, old, and how they died, emotion, it's a huge one when spirit come through to me, because they're showing me little videos in my head of memories, okay? Not all memories are happy, okay? So if it is a happy memory, I invariably start smiling, okay, because they're making me feel happy, they're giving me a sense of well-being. But some memories are sad, okay, and I might start to cry during a reading or just feel generally sad. That's because they're showing me a sad memory. Of course, you know, they get, you're sitting here, you're getting emotional talking to them and hearing all this from them, but they're also getting emotional because don't forget they miss you every bit as much as you miss them. Okay, so they're going to get emotional talking to you as well. And it's a huge thing that I feel a lot with first readings, especially where it's within the first 6 to 12 months of their passing. You know, if it's a first connection, if they're only just passed over, emotions are running high on both sides. Okay, so it can be one that we have to tackle sometimes, because when they get emotional, they tend to pull back a bit. But when I'm reading, the first big thing that comes to me is how they died. Okay, so when you come for a reading, it doesn't matter if it's me or any other medium, unless they've had medical training, it's very hard for us to diagnose what exactly they died from. Okay, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a coroner. So I might say to somebody, oh my God, I feel like a tightness in my chest. Or, oh, I've just got this whack, you know, like on my back, like I've been hit from my back, or I feel like I'm falling. So there's loads of different things that you can feel from somebody. Or I just feel like I was standing up and I was going about my business, and next all of a sudden it's like I hit a brick wall and I'm gone. So sometimes the spirit would click their fingers at me, okay? I was here one minute and gone the next. Sometimes they'll clap their hands. You know, it's just like, and sometimes it's just like the feeling of hitting a brick wall if it's a sudden passing. Okay, then if it's not a sudden passing, I feel different things with regards to perhaps being bedridden, perhaps being in a hospital, unresponsive, intubated, all these kind of things, okay? So I start to feel different sensations and different pains or discomfort in my body. So they're giving me an indication here of how they passed, okay? And with that, then, you know, am I male or am I female? Am I young or am I old? Okay, that's always kind of a difficult one to determine sometimes, because people don't always look their age. And sometimes the spirit come through and they acknowledge the age that they were when they took ill rather than the age that they were when they died. So for example, somebody might come to me and they say, oh, 4 years ago, you know, that's when I left. And I'm thinking, oh, right, okay, so they're dead 4 years. And then, you know, the sitter might say to me, no, they're only gone a year. But they were sick for 3 years before that. So a lot of spirit take into account when life as they know it ended. Okay, so they may have been sick, they may have been bedridden, they may have just been attending hospital appointments, they may have been housebound. So their life as they knew it ended 4 years ago, and that's key for a lot of spirit in my experience and opinion. Okay, when life as they knew it ended. Okay, so yeah, so the time can be very relevant to the person. Okay, so we've got how they died, you know, the age they were when they died, obviously if I feel male or female, okay, and we've got all the emotions. So after that, it's what they're showing me, and it's putting together the feeling that you're getting from the spirit together with the picture that they're giving you in your head. Okay, so for example, and this is an example I use quite frequently, if a spirit showed me in my head a picture of a house, and then emotionally they made me feel sad. Okay, well, there's no point in me saying to my sister, I feel sad about a house. You know, deal with that. Take that information home and do with it what you will. That's no good to nobody. Okay, I've got to find out as much information as I can from the spirit through the modality that I have. So I have to find out, I mean, what are the reasons people can be sad about a house? Was there a burglary? Was there a fire? Is there subsidence? Is there a dispute over land or property? There's so many reasons why someone can feel sad or emotional about a house. Okay, so that's just one example. So putting together what I'm feeling with the picture of the house to try and make a message. So there's interpretation involved. Okay, so unless somebody's spelling out for you in your ear exactly what it is that they're trying to tell you, and they're not, they're giving you a picture, they're giving you, well, me or your medium, they're giving you a picture, they're giving you a feeling of what it's about. And I have to meet that out, I have to work, I have to get information off them. Okay, so there's always room for error with something like that, but mediumship's not an exact science. Okay, so I'll get as much information as I can, I'll tell you as much as I can, but sometimes I just have to describe to somebody exactly what I'm feeling, because we all interpret things in different ways. Okay, so for example, if I saw the colour blue from a spirit, I'm naturally a cold person. I'm always cold, okay? So, which is, you'll wonder why I'm sitting here in January with no sleeves on, but I have a stove here behind me. So naturally, I am a cold person. So to me, blue means cold, and just to look at it makes me feel cold. But to another person, to see a blue, a sky blue, it may be a memory of a summer that you spent a summer's evening lying on the grass, just making shapes, you know, picking out shapes you see in the clouds or whatever. Maybe a memory of lying on a beach in Greece on a holiday you took together. So there's so many different interpretations of what somebody might be seeing, okay? So, you know, don't be afraid to ask the medium that you're with. Don't be afraid to say, I'm not really sure what you're talking about there, or that does not make sense to me, okay? Get your medium to explain exactly what it is that they're seeing, okay? And if you have your recording or you write it down, sometimes people don't take information that I give them during readings, okay? And that's absolutely fine. But if I see something, or if spirits are trying to explain something to me, I have to say it, because they don't get past it easily, because they're trying to give you this piece of information. And I have people that sit there and they go, no, that's not for me. Okay, please take it, because I'm not saying that I'm right, but 9 out of 10 times people go home and they speak to another family member and they'll go, oh yeah, that's because of X, Y, or Z, okay? So it does generally make sense, and people are always emailing or messaging me or calling me to say, oh, I'm really sorry about that, you know, but it did make sense. But that's okay, as long as you're happy and you can make something out of it. But there's a reason your spirit is telling you this. They're not lying, okay? There may have been something lost in translation, but they're not lying, okay? So take as much information as you can away from your medium, because there's a reason your loved one's saying it to you, okay? So, I mean, that really is how it works for me, okay? And as I said, while I'm reading, you might hear me say something like, I heard something very clearly, okay? Rarely, and there are times where it is a voice, but generally it's a memory of a voice, so something they said to you, or them saying the person's name, or something like this. Mostly it's a sound that connects. So one day I had a lady come to my house and she wanted to connect with her husband, okay? Obviously he passed away. And during the reading, her husband wanted to talk about his occupation. So he was showing me in my head all kinds of switches and dials and whatever. So I was thinking in my head, did you operate machinery of some sort, or work in a factory, or with some kind of, machinery or technology or something? So then all of a sudden this plane flew quite low over my house. Now obviously not a passenger plane, but a smaller plane. And there's a small airfield, but down the road, but very rarely does anything come out of it. And I'm not on a flight path, I'm an hour from any airport. So it was really unusual. And I just said very flippantly, after the shock of it, we both looked out the window at this plane. And after the shock of it, I said flippantly to her, I don't suppose your husband was a pilot, was he? And she said, well, actually, yes, he was. So, you say, well, how did spirit manipulate an airplane to go over my house? But that's the way that they show you different things, okay? So when somebody says, I hear something from spirit, it's not always just the physical voice. Sometimes it's a sound, that you would relate to them, okay? So I'm explaining all this, and you're probably sitting there thinking to yourself, well, I don't really care how you communicate with them. I just want a message. Okay, and that's fair enough. But it is worth bearing in mind who you are trying to connect with when you are going to see a medium. The reason for that is everybody has their own personality, okay? And most of the time, it doesn't matter what kind of medium you go to, but you are going to have people who have what I call extreme personalities, okay? So say, for example, if you had a granny who passed away and, during her lifetime, she was quite shy and she never spoke to strangers, okay? So this is quite a large part of her personality and her character. So, spirit do not lose their character or their personality traits just because they've passed over to spirit. They're the same person, effectively. They have the same sense of humour and quirks and whatever. So the only thing that they're missing is this physical body, okay? So if your grandmother didn't talk to strangers in life, she's not going to just start all of a sudden becoming a chatterbox and chatting to everybody just because she's passed. If your grandmother was this quiet character in life and all of a sudden she came through as a chatterbox talking to me and telling me all her life secrets, then you're going to say, that's not my grandmother because my grandmother was shy, she wouldn't have spoken to you. They're going to come through in a way that you will recognise them. Okay, so if she didn't talk to strangers in life, don't forget that your medium is a stranger. She's very unlikely to be very open with your medium. So going to a medium who can hear her is probably not going to be a benefit to you because she's not, likely to talk and she's not going to spill her guts. So going then to somebody who maybe can see her, or better still, who can read her energy, is going to be better for you because they're going to be able to feel things from her and pick things up from her that she wouldn't normally say out. Okay, so always think of the person that you're trying to connect with before you connect with or before you make an appointment with a medium, or you pick your medium that you want to go to. It's like people say to me, do babies not grow up in the spirit world? Because, I miscarried a baby perhaps 20 years ago and they're trying to connect with this child, and they say, why is it still a baby? And the reason for that is because when people lose children, they forever have this vision in their mind of that child as a child. So if, for example, and it's happened where a mother came and she'd lost a 2-year-old 30 years ago. So if I said to her, there's a gentleman here coming through and he's in his mid-30s, she's going to say, no, I don't know anybody that's that age. So they're going to come through in a way that you'll recognise them. So for that child to come through as a 32, 33-year-old, it's not going to work. You're going to say, I don't know who that is. But if a 2-year-old comes through, you're going to say, oh, that's my boy. So be aware of what's being said by your medium. Okay. I think that explains a lot of it, but I do get that this is something that I do every day. And there may be sides of it that I take for granted or assume that you know. Okay, so I'm going to keep an eye, obviously, on the comments below here, but I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Ask any questions and I'll answer them as best I can. One last thing that I wanted to explain to you is the word that I have on here, which is psychometry. So I remember reading in National Geographic years ago about a tribe that was discovered down in South America somewhere, and they were afraid of the cameras that people were bringing in, photos and video, and they felt that part of their soul was being taken in every photo. And I remember thinking how ridiculous that sounded. But now that I'm doing this professionally, one thing that I found that I can really use is psychometry, okay? And what that means is when you're coming for a reading, bring something with you. I may not ask to hold it, but it's got the energy of your loved one in it, okay? So it could be a photograph, it could be a belonging, okay? Now, I've said to people in the past to bring belongings, okay? If you're going to bring a belonging in your handbag or in your wallet, whatever, that belonged to somebody, don't bring an ornament that sat in their living room for 30 years, because they may have touched that once a year to give it a good wash down. But what you're going to want for someone's energy is something that they would have worn every day. So perhaps a wristwatch, a chain, a ring, you know, maybe even some earrings. Okay, so something that they would have worn on a regular basis that would have had their energy in it. And that's why I say most of the time to people bring a photograph, because that too has the energy of the person in it. So if I'm finding it difficult to connect with the person, I can hold this and psychometrize it, and that is read their energy from it, okay? I'll try and find the video clip. If I can find it, I'll add the comment to this video here. A program that I watched a good while ago about, you know, one of these ghost programs, or, you know, trying to connect with spirits on TV, and they were in an antique store, and the energy that they were picking up from all the belongings was amazing. Okay, you know, things like, you know, these little sets that ladies used to have on their dressing tables years ago, little fancy mirror and hairbrush and things like this, and they're picking up such great energy from it. So that's called psychometry, and that's what that means. So when you're coming for a reading, you can always help to bring something with you, okay, because it brings the energy of the person with you. And, you know, time and time again at demonstrations it's come through, you know, you've got a picture of your dog in your bag or something like this, okay? So don't be afraid to shove a little belonging in your pocket, okay, or wear a jacket even that somebody would have worn every day. Okay, so look, I leave it at that, because as I say, it's probably a little bit boring now at this stage, but I hope that explains it in some way. As I say, connect with me on social media. I'll answer as many questions as best I can. I'm far from an expert on the subject, but I can speak from my experience and from my opinion, and I'll try and help you as best I can. So look, I wish everybody the best of luck with their journey in dealing with their grief and getting used to living without their loved ones. And as always, I will send healing to everybody. So take care, and thanks for watching.